Broad Street Review Podcast, Philly's online hub for arts, culture, and commentary, where art and ideas meet. I am your host, Darnell Radford. Today on the podcast, Thaddeus Phillips talks about his latest theatrical experience, ZOO MOTEL, a quarantined experiment that explores what is possible in virtual live performance. So get your room key, locate the ice machine. Here is my interview with Thaddeus Phillips. Welcome to Rep Radio. I'm your host, Darnell Radford, and today I am in the virtual studio because that's where we live, and I am looking at, but you will be hearing from director, deviser, conceiver, Thaddeus Phillips, whose production ZOO MOTEL will be at Theater Exile very shortly. As you are listening to this, you will have the opportunity to go to Theater Exile, find out more, and be a part of this experience. Thaddeus, welcome back to Rep Radio.
Yeah, thanks, Darnell. It's been a while.
I feel like I've been saying this is kind of like in January when you tell everyone Happy New Year. You try to figure out how long you can go before you can stop saying Happy New Year. And since 2020 was what it is, I have to start every interview by saying 2020. I mean, right? So how was your 2020?
Well, crazy, man. I mean, it started, we were in Spain. I was directing a play in Spain for the Teatro Abadia called Antropoceno, which just means the Anthropocene, which is the name for the new geological epoch that a lot of people say we're in now, which is a time on Earth when we're the ones creating the environment that we live in. We have the power through nuclear energy, climate change, carbon emissions, right? So it's a really crazy idea for a theater play. What happens during the Anthropocene can be, disappearing cities, viruses, all kinds of things. So we're making that show. I was with a group of actors and dancers in Spain, and it opened in February. And yeah, I had to go do a press conference in Milan early February, and I got a temperature check on my head. That was really weird because that was before the virus hit Italy like strong. And then I went back to Spain. Then I came back here to Colombia. But when I landed at the airport, I got a message that the shows that were going to come up in Italy, that's why I went for the day, were canceled. They're like, this is really weird, this situation. Don't come back. And then the Spanish was like, what's going on? And then a week later, they canceled the show in Spain. That got shut down. Then we had a 9-city tour of the show called Inflatable Space. That got shut down. That was going to be all over China. So it kind of like felt like just missing these hotspots until it came, right next door to our house. It just took a little longer to get here. And so then, yeah, I went along with the whole lockdown thing. But again, since I don't have a normal job, I didn't know what Zoom was. I didn't need to know. And then it wasn't until May that I did an actual like fireside chat, a virtual fireside chat with New York Theater Workshop. And it was through the thing called Zoom. That was my first time with that. And I remember trying to set up the camera in an interesting way to show my studio. Because I didn't like just me sitting, floating with stuff behind me. It was weird. But that made me start thinking, and then very slowly I started to get the basic framework for how you could make a live theater show, but through the www.
Yeah, I feel like even though we're also very aware of the web, we know its capabilities, but we just never really gave any thought to producing, what would normally be presented on a proscenium or some sort of space where actual people show up to actually put it in the virtual space and it be the same thing. We knew that it wasn't going to be the same thing. We would have to basically create something brand new. We're calling it theater, but it feels like something different, because of all of the infrastructure around theater that we know so well. It's been interesting to see the producers that have been able to interpret this space in this past year.
Yeah, I mean, so that's kind of what happened with us. Is it never occurred to me to do a show online, right? We had basically two processes. One, this show Inflatable Space was to go to Norway in September. And they said, look, just make a film version of it. Can you readapt it as like a digital movie? And there was some video in that show. And we were like, yeah, I think we could try it. And so through the video designer and myself and another actor, we put it together. But it was really just readapting an existing thing. And it was okay. It was okay. But at the same time, earlier in like the summer is when I started to think of how could you do a theater show live. And two keys were very important. And I always mention this, but they were very key for me. Is one, I saw a guy who's doing a magic show for only 25 people a night on Zoom. And I thought, wow, that's interesting. You could do something with a small crowd. That to me somehow would work because you can fit 25 on one gallery view on Zoom. And then the other thing that was really important was using the aesthetic of cinema in movies, not theater, to show because in the end, what the audience is watching is through a camera. So what we did is rigged a camera, a webcam, a really good one, on a camera crane that tracks, it spins around the space, it can do top shots, it can do all kinds of really weird angles, and be one continuous shot. And it has different extensions on it, so I can, templates I can put on the camera frame, I can move it from weird places because it has these extension arms. So basically, our proposal, especially with ZOO MOTEL, is as a live movie with a small audience, you can recreate the feeling of theater, but in its own medium of doing this through the www, not as a replacement for something that was supposed to be done. So ZOO MOTEL was created 100% from scratch for this medium. It came from the pandemic. It has some pandemic themes, but they're slowly adapting and changing as we do the show because the pandemic's changing. But that's been really interesting to recreate theater live in this way.
Is there a moment in this process where you start seeing this isn't just a one-off? This is something that you might incorporate into future work?
Well, yeah, I think there's a lot of possibilities. I mean, we started previews on September 28th and just finished a continuous run on March 28th, that means it was 6 months. So we just ran this thing for 6 months. We're taking a couple weeks off before we do the theater Exile. Through the experience, we've learned that all the advantages of doing something like this are, especially if it's made for this medium, because it's not a replacement, right? So it means a couple things. One, it means we can make something else. So I think we're already starting to think of something we'll open in the summer that will be really interesting because now it's clearly 100%. Like this we knew was just for the internet, but the point is now we're going to make the new one like going much further with the things we developed for ZOO MOTEL. Cinematically. And I think for other theaters, what they've done is they've found that it's interesting to do stuff when they're back live to also webcast it live so people around the world can see it. So there's a whole other dimension that can make even theaters back in the theater more accessible to all kinds of people, you know?
Yeah. I've been saying, I used to work for a film-based museum that would do screenings in their main theater, and then they would simulcast in the secondary theater if they had an overflow. And I was thinking about that as a theater hybrid, as you know, as the theater company is producing for the stage, but has this extra element, this virtual experience that could also be something, because we're all, now that we're engaging over the web, we will have the opportunity to reach an audience that cannot physically be here. And that experience might be good. Also, original work, I think, has a great opportunity for multiple experiences, because you know it's new. So you're trying to process this and and sort of interpret, you know, make your own interpretation of your experience as well. So I see an opportunity where you could go to a live performance and then also experience this virtual uh, version of it later, uh, to continue the conversation. I've just been thinking very creatively about the potential of this, of all of this.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's a lot of things. I mean, one thing I thought when I started doing ZOO MOTEL was that it could be done on stage, but with like glass walls, and the audience could see how it was done, but also then watch the live feed on the screen above. But that, the more we started doing this and the more ingrained we got, the more less interesting that became, because this really became its own thing and it lives only in this way. And so that's what's been so interesting about like touring, quote unquote, with it. So we've done it at the Festival Santiago a Mil in Santiago, Chile in January, because my Spanish is pretty good. So we did 6 shows for them, late night shows, and they dealt with everything. So there's 2 things that are really cool is people from anywhere can like find these tickets or a way to see it, no matter where it is, right? So for example, a French-Canadian producer saw it in Chile, even though it's all online from her house, right? Even though she could have seen it in English at one of our own shows. And then so she booked us to do it at the festival in Quebec later in May, late May, where we might do, my French is terrible. I might try some of it in French, because then it'd be like this weird French movie. But so we've been able to like do it through these other theaters all over the place, but the audiences will pop on from wherever they want to pop on from. And when you send out an email list, we did it through a theater in Denver. So when they send out the email to their list, a lot of those people on their email list, they're not always in Denver, right? So they get the email, but then like I get email stuff from Wilma Theater. I'm not in Philadelphia, right? But I can now see the stuff they're doing online. People from Nebraska were seeing what we were doing in Denver, which is actually here in Columbia. So that's been really cool. But I mean, the most important and interesting thing is how to make the most live theatrical experience in the moment, and kind of make you forget you're in a Zoom thing or you're watching something less than theater, right?
Yeah.
And so that's where the use of the camera has been really fun, and playing with all the aesthetics of cinema and film, of like, you know, tracking shots and choreography. When I mean choreography is like the camera would pass my face, but then if I duck under the camera, I can leave the shot, but the camera's still moving. So when the camera pans back around, I'm no longer there. But it's because I did a weird choreography with that actual camera. That's also where this magic comes in, that we kind of got inspired from this magic show I'd read about. So we integrated some elements of magic into the structure to bring the other motel guests into the show. And that was designed by Steve Chiffo, who's been in Philadelphia with The Elephant Room and some other shows. He works with Jeff Sabella and Trey Lyford.
So I saw somewhere that I think I saw that the audience size is small. what's intimate.
Yeah.
Is there an artistic intention to that?
Yeah. So, like I was saying, you can fit 25 windows on a gallery view on one screen on Zoom. The minute you get 26, you got to scroll over to the next page.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Right? So 25 is like the maximum capacity to fit physically on the screen. So we made the room have 25 rooms. The hotel, sorry, Zoom Motel. So there's only 25 rooms, but what that does is it makes it a much more intimate experience for the audience, because you're not one of 100, and 100 online is a lot of people, a lot. In a theater, that's a small theater, but the audience capacity is, for a live event where there's interaction. We could do a live event for 1,000 people. If U2 was going to do a concert from their house or something, that would make sense. But they're not going to be calling on people and doing magic tricks and weird games with evacuation maps and stuff. So it was a way to kind of contain and make the event a little more special and unique. Because you got to get one of 25 rooms a night. It's not just get a ticket and there could be 1,000 people there.
Yeah. Has the piece changed over the 6 months? Has the experience of running it caused you to, return to it and make tweaks and adjustments?
Yeah, it's a very strange piece because this is a strange time. And so we kind of launched it with not knowing exactly what we had. And it was very weird. A lot of the story, especially in the beginning, was kind of just happening on its own with not so much intellectual thought to it. Because it's, about being lost one night or 1 year in a motel room. There's not much of a story that can actually happen, literally. You know what I mean? You could not have toothpaste or something, and the door disappears very early on in the place. So, we've kind of locked ourselves in. So then what we started to do is try to uncover the mystery that we created for ourselves. And the audiences early on helped that a lot, just through feedback. And we always talk to them after the show. We'd give them a backstage tour. And then just started to understand how certain things could happen, like a puzzle. So we've really done a lot of work over the past 6 months. Like, we might do the show the same for a month, but then we have a couple of days where we're not doing it. We can try some new cues and stuff. We have to retech them as we would in the theater with sound and light and everything. But for this last month of March, we fixed some parts that I think make the order more interesting. And even this week, we're going to look at a couple other scenes to see how we want to put them in or iron them out, as it were, for the Theater Exile run.
What has been some of the experience? The response. What has been some of the response from the audiences that have experienced it so far?
Well, it's been great. We have we've had all kinds of people see it, from really serious theater people. Mary Zimmerman showed up. She's a Tony Award winner for Metamorphosis. She's a director. I don't know her. She was at a show. Teller, who I know, so I invited him, but still, that was cool. Penn and Teller came.
Wow.
And then one of our biggest fans is Cohen, Dylan, who's an 8-year-old in Colorado Springs. He's seen it 7 times. And our biggest response has been, I think people really appreciate the creative things that Stephen came up with and that I came up with design-wise, and the kind of playfulness of it, and how surprising it is. Like, you have no idea what's going to happen next because of the way it's set up, which is something I strive to do in my theater work anyway. I think even for some people, you felt it's been a really great thing to see and share with the other 25 people. Because, especially in November, December in England, we were doing a bunch of shows, and they were in a serious lockdown at that point. So it was like a really nice, bizarre mind trip for an hour and 10 minutes to somewhere totally different, but that you were actively involved in. Because unlike Netflix, you can go as far as you want in a movie, but still, it's not talking back to you, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of been that kind of thing. And yeah, the reactions are very different depending on if it's more of a European audience or a Midwestern audience in the United States. So that's also been really interesting.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you that because you are fortunate enough to travel with your work. And so here in Philadelphia, we'll have a celebrated artist who has a, you know, who has a collection of work that for the most part stays here, doesn't necessarily travel to another country or, experience throughout a festival circuit. How do you begin, or do you give any thought to the audience around the world? How do you craft your pieces so that they resonate, in more than just the place it was created?
Yeah, I mean there's always a very strong visual element to the pieces. Like we did a piece in 2018 maybe called "A Billion Nights on Earth." It was for 3-year-olds and up at Fringe Arts and then at BAM, the Next Wave Festival. And that is essentially a live children's book. Huge visuals, huge inflatables, very strange set. And it just has a father and son in striped pajamas kind of getting lost through this magical world. Very, very little text. So that one relies heavily on imagery to break any kind of language barrier. And then what's been strange is 17 Border Crossings is a piece I do about just crossing one border to the next. Now that has a lot of words in it because I'm telling a lot of stories, but still it's visually all over the place on stage with a lot of changes, and there's smatterings of all kinds of other languages because it's about international borders. So in that way, it's looking at crossing borders from an international perspective. So I think that also, and the visual nature of it helped and it was very easy to tour physically. Like there's only 3 of us who would tour with 4 suitcases, which bizarrely enough, that was supposed to be in Italy. So 2 suitcases are in Italy. And the other 2, I think, are somewhere in a shop in Philly where something was getting fixed with a lot of dust on them right now because of the virus. And then this show, ZOO MOTEL, there's good sections where there's no talking. It's just music and crazy images that we're creating in the moment, or I'm creating in the moment. So although there's text, it's not so much text dependent, if that makes sense. It relies a lot on imagery. And then I've always been very inspired by international theater, the work of Peter Brook or Robert Lepage, and cinema from Europe and stuff. So that, dictates the vision and the kind of creative way my work goes, with a kind of international outlook when it's made from the beginning.
Yeah. And I'm sure some of that is, realized through the process as well. It's just kind of interesting to be in one place and then see how your work resonates all over the place. I think it's something that you don't really, you can only experience it from where you are. So you only take it in this one space. And it's kind of, I like the idea of, whichever company you are presenting this with, we still have the ability to experience it. I could have experienced the Madrid production of this as well.
Yeah.
And it may have been a different experience, but here at Theater Exile, I'm going to feel, I'm going to feel something, even though it's presented where it is, I'm still going to feel like a Philadelphia production of it.
Yeah.
It's just, I guess we think about it when we go to like Edinburgh, or any of the arts festivals all over the world. You just start thinking more about, this may resonate on the surface, but it's going to have deeper levels for cultures who don't share your culture. I just find that exciting, and I think about that in all the work that I've been fortunate enough to experience all over the place. So this piece, Madrid, Stockholm, Prague, Denver, Santiago, Perth, Chicago.
Yeah.
I mean, I mean, so it's like so you create this piece, and then you're sort of like, now where do I place it as well? You know, so that's a process in itself, to figure all of that out. So you're giving us a couple of weeks, before you pick this up again for Exile. Uh, what did you figure out a system of like how much time you need from these, or can you just keep going, if the opportunities present?
Yeah, we can just keep going. I mean, it's only an hour long. It takes about a half hour to get ready. So, it's very easy to do, whenever. We've done a couple school university shows at 11 in the morning. And all the shows for Europe that we've done, we do it 2 in the afternoon here. So yeah, no, it's very easy to do. But if you want to change something, you got to retech it and reorganize it.
Yeah.
And for the March shows, we reordered. You wouldn't totally notice, but we reordered certain events. So there's like a certain flashback scene where you find out why my character is in this room. It's not that interesting, but it's important. We move the order to when it happens, but that just kind of shifts everything. But that kind of thing I've done in the live stage shows as well, where we're like, oh, wait a minute, we should do this scene here, not there. It works better at the end than the beginning or whatnot. Like this show I did in Spain, the Anthropocene, the theaters are open in Spain, so it just reopened. But they had us redo the show because it mentions the virus and all kinds of things. So we set the second half of the show in the pandemic and after, which actually made the show much better. There's a whole scene in the airport that was really cool, really weird, but we cut the fact that the woman in the airport was going anywhere, right? So in order to keep the scene, we made that a dream. And we had her, now she hates airports and doesn't fly. So she goes to sleep on her pillow, and then we do the exact same sequence, but just in the context of it's like this nightmare she's having at this apocalyptic airport with all these people in masks and putting gel all over everything or whatever. You know what I mean? So it was also fun to just rewrite the context of things, and that's the great thing about theater because it's live. So we can, figure out new context. But, this show's about, on one level, being trapped and finding these weird symbols that look for solace and redemption, not redemption, but inspiration or creativity. And the new piece that Stephen Duvall and I are thinking of making would be the opposite. It would be about like freedom and adventure and travel, but we'd still do it from this little room and go much further. We discovered a lot of wonderful techniques with miniatures and live Disney techniques with this animation table and things that we would probably incorporate and go much further with than locked between 4 walls.
That's great. I wanted to ask you what you have, you've been focusing on this. You've been focusing on bringing this to life and then touring it. Have you had time to experience any other virtual theater?
Oh yeah,
this time.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen a couple of things with my son at the National Theater. Those are pre-recorded, so they're canned, but they're well done, so they look cool. But you don't feel like it's live. I saw the Pig Iron Zero Cost House that they did a great job of translating an existing piece for Zoom. That was really cool. And then there was this theater in Prague that we did ZOO MOTEL with. They were doing live broadcasts of these really weird puppet shows, like Saturday mornings. They would be at 11 in the morning. And even though it was like there was no interaction or anything, you knew it was live and you could feel that it was live. And we have a big screen TV, so we were watching it on that. The Drak Theater and Divadlo de Alfred Dvorak, this theater in Prague. That was really cool. And then, yeah, I've seen things that are horrible. I don't want to be mean, but I mean, if it's horrible, the Royal Shakespeare Company did a Midsummer Night's Dream experiment that probably cost like $4 million. And it was like, Puck was a rock, and Puck is supposed to be like this magical, fast creature. And it was like a rock moving around really slow, couldn't bounce on a log. It didn't even make any sense. They hadn't even read the play. So that made me really angry. I pre-read it to see if my son would like it, and did not pass the test. Because they're missing the point. Like, it's about, in this space, all the, we have this phone from 1912. We have a typewriter from 1960. All the elements are analog, and that's really important to fight the digital and play against it. Because the ZOO Motel proposal is like, this is a live theater show you're watching. Live from your house. It's live. We're not doing any weird video manipulative editings. We're not changing any backgrounds. There's no, cinema. You know what I mean? It's all live magic kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we've seen things that have been really, really cool. Another guy did a puppet show from his house from Prague that was just completely nuts. And it was clearly like in his living room, but he has this huge wardrobe that he kept opening different layers in that he built and dropping these puppets down. And it was like 20 minutes and really kind of scary. So yeah, and again, we're here in Bogota, not really able to travel. So to be able to turn on the computer or a TV and watch a live show with us in mind is really cool, which you would not have been able to do before. You would have to go there or try to find a video on YouTube or something.
Yeah. So going through this experience, what do you think, or can you give your sort of opinion on what theaters should, moving forward? Here we are in 2021. It looks like we're planning for June as a sort of getting back to things. We're probably planning for a fall. Everybody's planning for a fall now. What do you think, because of this experience, what do you think people should be thinking about artistically that maybe wasn't so prevalent before 2020?
I think it's important to understand, I mean, part of this problem we're in now is, because we're doing things we're just not supposed to do. I don't think, if they determine this came from that market exactly, which they're still fighting over. It came out today. They're not, they're not happy with the WHO report, or at least our government isn't. So you realize how, precarious our situation is as beings, because the virus is stronger than us. Any virus can be, and how connected we are. And so I think what's really important for theaters is to, in the work they curate and they select and they make, is kind of bringing those issues on of what's going on with these radical changes that we're experiencing. You know what I mean? What do we do to fight them? And with all these social issues that are happening, especially in the United States, that's also connected, I think, to understand there's a certain way that the world's been constructed that's essentially incorrect for our survival. Forget about if it's wrong or not. It's completely wrong, but it also doesn't allow for us to live. You know what I mean? The whole capitalist system of the, thing, and there was this thing, there's this guy named Buckminster Fuller, you know him? The guy who invented the geodesic dome.
Yeah.
And we mentioned him in the play in Madrid, but I found this fantastic quote that we put in the play in Madrid, where he says, if in the 21st century, we're still asking people what's their sex, what's their sexuality, what's their religion, what's their race, we're not going to make it. Right? It's totally interesting, because he's basically saying you can't think of things as separate. You've got to think as everything is one whole. And I think theaters have been, it's really hard to say, oh, no, make a play about the climate catastrophe. I'm not saying that, but kind of encompassing the whole picture and the global picture and the picture of the future, as opposed to only what happened at the corner store yesterday or whatever, To me, I would like to see more of that, because I find a lot of theaters in the United States are very, they could branch open. It could be a little bit more bigger. But I also think this whole push to be much more accessible and inclusive and break down these like power structures, even in the theaters, are going to be much more helpful for creating more interesting work. And then also the challenges of getting audiences back together in the same space. I mean, I don't know what it is in the States. Here I live in the countryside, so I don't know. But in Spain, they're in the damn theater, so they're just in the theater. They're kind of spaced out a little bit, but it's not that big a deal. They're all just wearing masks and stuff. So on the other side of the world, I'm also seeing places that are kind of, for not the most part, but kind of normal. So,
Yeah.
But I don't think, like I know the theaters can open in New York and they don't want to. I think all theaters in New York can open right now, but there's been no guidelines and no help from the government on how they're supposed to do it. So they don't want to do it,
Yeah.
which makes sense. But yeah, I think it's just much more of awareness of those really big issues because they're really important. I mean, like if we don't have, it's like that whole campaign of these rock and rollers have this thing. There's no music on a dead planet, right?
Mm.
We can't even box each other if we're all dead. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, you can't even do bad things to each other if you're dead, if you wanted to, right? It's like if the planet dies, that's a bad thing. Or for us, the planet itself will never die. It doesn't care, you know?
Yeah.
It'll be like Mars or whatever, but it just would be very hard for us to live on Mars, you know?
I mean, arguably, this standstill, the fact that humans had to shelter in place has been good for the for the planet.
Yeah. In some ways,
They're
yes.
talking about, you know, nature's, you know, the air is clear, you know, endangered species are no longer endangered, or not all of them, but some have been able to kind of take up space again.
Yeah.
It has been kind of interesting. It just tells us that it does tell us that we're moving so quickly, and we for the longest time had just been prioritizing ourselves as if we are the only people, we're the only beings who inhabit the planet.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
this is like, you know, they would say if you get the flu or you get sick, in general, it's your body saying it's time to like slow down and focus on you. Like, let's take this moment to repair, because whatever you were doing up till this point, like we had to actually shut down systems in your body to get you to
Yeah, exactly.
to get you to take to slow down. So we've all had time to stop and think, and I'm wondering, how do you, you know, as you're creating these interesting pieces all the time, how do you make space for your art? Or does it just come up and then you have to focus on it? Or do you actually make dedicated space for your art?
Well, here, so look, I mean, here we live in Colombia, so we actually used to have a person come 3 times a day, and like it's just how it is down here, and like cook and clean and do laundry and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of weird because you're like that's just very strange. But also, if we didn't hire Carmen to do that with us, she would have to do it with someone else anyway, and we were paying better and we're nicer. And then our son would go to school. It was a cool little school up in the mountains, or we would all be touring together. So when it stops, then you also have more things to do because you have to like figure out homeschooling, which has been wonderful. But still, your time, you don't have as much time as you want. You know what I mean? In a way, because you got to do a lot more things that you weren't doing before. So we had to balance that out, and that made it a little harder to open the show the way we like wanted to. But at the same time, like ZOO MOTEL is so weird, we just had to start doing it to understand it. And now we've figured out an amazing school program that's online. So he takes yoga in London and math in North Carolina and science in Canada through these very specific short classes, like an hour long, but they're very focused and very concentrated. So the actual information he gets is really amazing. And we can curate it. We'll be like, oh, that one was no good. He'll be like, I don't like that one. So that's been really cool. And And then if we want to go on a trip to the coast or whatever, because we don't fly right now, we can drive up there, but we can take the computer with us and he can still do classes. That's kind of been really cool. But in terms of time, and time goes, as we all know, I think we all would be surprised that it's March 30th right now. That's really weird. It doesn't feel like we've been doing this show for 6 months at all. I kind of remember before Christmas and after Christmas, but as the marker, it's like you were saying, the thing with the Happy New Year. So now I'm like, okay, it's almost April. And if we're going to make a new show, like we got to get working on it pretty fast. But so I think it'll go in spurts where you're kind of slowly thinking of something and then you just start doing it and kind of go crazy.
Yeah.
And my son's been an inspiration because he's doesn't have to deal with computers and work and trying to find finances or whatever. He's just draws and stuff. So his body of work of all these comics that he's created and paintings is unbelievable over the past year, even over the past week. And I'm like, how does he get all of that done? Like, where does he, So even just yesterday, he made this amazing, crazy comic / artwork thing that has helped me kind of figure out how to like get into a groove to make this new piece, So in that way, there will be time, we just have to organize it. And then when I was working in Spain, that was a 6-hour day rehearsal. They just put me on Zoom into the theater. So that was a totally real, regular theatrical work day. I just was doing it from my studio here, and they were all in the theater. But I was giving them notes. We were doing the lights. There was a problem on Sunday's show where this one transition is just terrible that I couldn't figure it out. So, I called in today before they did the show on WhatsApp, and we all together fixed that little light change, in Spain. And so that's been totally normal, regular work. But the creative work of making a piece, yeah. And now, because we have the power, I produced essentially the first run of ZOO MOTEL, and then it started getting picked up. So the new show we can do when we want, when we're ready, So in that way, that's it. The only way to do that is set a date and just start getting it ready,
A deadline focuses the lights.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that one would be a real test because that one would be launched when theaters are more open. So it would be launched as a proposal to be like, it's going to be like hybrid programming. Like, for example, Arts Emerson has a wonderful international touring season, kind of like Fringe Arts. And we've been up there a lot. And they booked ZOO MOTEL for November. Their theater will be open before that. But they're like, some of these things are so cool in their perspective. They want to have a hybrid to share their audience the work in whichever way it comes. And some audiences like that because they're like, you know what, tonight we're going to check out this cool thing here at home. We don't have to go out in the snow and try to find parking and blah, 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 So I think some theaters will kind of hybrid shows, which is pretty cool, I think.
Yeah. I think we're going to have such a great appreciation for to be present in the space, physically present, but also we are adjusting to this in a way. We're finding such value in it as well. I experienced a cabaret last weekend while we were making dinner. And so, we had a stand for our iPad and we were tuned in. And there's a chat thread there, but we were also preparing dinner. So halfway through the experience, we're enjoying dinner. So that was something. It was really cool to be able to do. Of course, it's not something I want to do sitting in the theater, at intermission, pull out my dinner and eat. But because I think people just sort of attach, the appreciation they have for theater, no matter what, where they are. So if you're listening to it in your ears on the bus, or if you're in a crowded room and you do have your headphones on, but you got the noise canceling one so that you can escape and still be with all these people. I think people will still find a way. It's kind of like I want my MTV, it's like I want my theater, and we'll get it no matter what.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
and I do like how this, you know, all the pieces, all the pieces that present on stage, place our characters in a box that they have to learn how to. We are observing the character navigating this space, and so in real life we are in this box, this virtual box, and we are retraining our brains to figure out how to get the most value out of this. Like I would have never wanted to go. Um, I would have never wanted to go to back-to-back meetings before, but to have a hard out at a meeting, in a virtual meeting, because you have to go right into another one, isn't as terrible as I have to go from one floor to another floor to get to another meeting, or I have to go across town to engage with these people I want to engage with. So there is some value in it. So even though people are so overwhelmed by having meetings, I think using this space to get what we want out of it, we'll still find the value in it, even though we prefer, the live in person space
Yeah, exactly.
for it. So ZOO Motel is presented by Theater Exile, April 15th to May 2nd. And after you take a much deserved break, you'll be here with Theater Exile to present this. And you'll be presenting from your home in Colombia?
Yeah, exactly.
Yes,
yes,
have
yes.
do you ever get, I feel like the production, being a producer, a theater producer, I've always been nervous on the production side about something like, oh, a light went out, we can't figure, there's a patch gone wrong, or some bit like that. Like, does this connection ever make you nervous when you get, your team has this all taken care of, but, the
Well, I
internet
mean,
is unpredictable?
I think we lost power once, um, but that was only for about 5 minutes, and
Hmm.
that people were pretty cool. But I think what was funny is I had to set. We need Ethernet, not can't run it off a hotspot off of a phone. But I
Mm-hmm.
was able to get back in through the hotspot first to at least let people know through the chat, that we're waiting for the power to come back on.
Yeah.
But that's been it. That was once.
Yeah.
That's what could happen. The power could go out. That's about it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, or the internet goes down, but that's the same thing, I guess, because it's with the power.
Yeah. And it's, there's always something that could go. You just roll with it.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
again, that's also the resilience of a theater audience. It's like very forgiving and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
understand. They'll get back to it. We'll be fine. Um,
Exactly.
yeah. Is there any parting thoughts or statements you want to make about ZOO Motel before we let you go?
Well, no, I mean, it's just really exciting to be officially doing it in Philadelphia,
Hmm.
because we've done premiered, most of my things have premiered there in some form or another, either through Fringe Arts or Live Arts or the Fringe Festival, which is all the same entity with many names, and or Painted Bride. So this is, but I've never done anything with Exile, so this is really cool to kind of be performing this show somewhat in Exile with Theater Exile. It's
There
very
goes the
cool.
marketing, Deb.
Exactly. you know.
Yeah. Well, I'm always excited by what Theater Exile brings to the stage, whether it be in person or virtually. So this will not disappoint as well. So you can go to theaterexile.org for information on the show. You can also go to ZOO Motel, zoomotel.org, for information as on a grander scale about ZOO Motel. Thaddeus Phillips, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with
Yeah,
me.
thanks. Great talking with
And
you.
I think it was interesting to like have that conversation way back in 2011. I might have to do like a rebroadcast of it before we put this up. But it was a pleasure to talk to you, and thank you for sharing your art and finding a way to make it even through very justifiable terms where so many artists had to take a step back and
exactly
figure out what was we all had to wait. And we've been very patient and very celebratory of the work that has been able to cut through all of this madness. So it's a pleasure to talk to you, and I can't wait to experience this piece.
Yeah, I can't wait to see you there. I'll see you there.
Head on over to our website at www.broadstreetreview.com and click Get Involved at the top. While you're there, help keep us running and click Contribute to find out how. Connect with us on social media on Facebook and Twitter at Broad Street Review. Thank you for helping to keep the conversation going.